Hi everybody, PlanetWalls here. We're going to be doing a sealed. So I'm going to be looking into, building a sealed deck from our options here, recording this. It should be posted tonight, actually. I'm getting ready to go to Grand Prix Worcester this weekend. Still can't say that properly, like a proper Bostonian or Worcestian. So right now we're going to sort by rarity first for the sealed deck. It's M13 sealed. See what we've got. We've got one of the least playable mythics in the set, and only one of them. Then we have a Mutilate, which might be something to look at, along with an expensive black control card. Don't tend to like creatures whose activated abilities require this much mana, but this thing's fine. So it's a 3/6. That's weird. It's got Death Touch. We put a Petrification counter on target creature, and then it gains Defender and becomes a colorless artifact. So, I mean, it's creature removal, basically. You want some way to deal with the creatures once they're there. Let's see, there we go, card. That way you guys can see what's going on. Okay, so black is interesting so far. We've got this recurable red creature, which I believe is playable if you're not playing very much red, just as a splash, because it's 4/2 flying. But if you're playing a lot of red, or in the late game, if you're not playing as much, you can recur it, which is good. Ground Seal is pretty bad in this format. I guess it's a cantrip, so hope I don't have to play that. Won't be playing any of these basic lands. The red-black dual land is actually good. It looks like we might be playing black. Of course, one thing to note, it's gonna have to probably replace a mountain in a deck that we're playing with with black-red, because of the Mutilate. We want to increase our swamp count, probably. This guy's good in a deck of Mutilate, which is interesting. But I'm gonna switch to looking at cards by color. And this way we can see if any color stands out as really good. So first thing I like to do is remove all the cards that are virtually irrelevant. Of course, Evolving Wilds and Dragon Skull Summit could get in the deck, but we're going to forget about them for now. Yeah, this Ground Seal is pretty irrelevant. Ranger's Path, nothing exciting. So in green we have like Ramp, and then we have Giant Guys on the high end, and there are a couple decent cards, like Visionary fills out a deck, and it can be good. Can trade with something, especially if you're running Exalted cards. Yeah, his Force Mage is fine. Nothing too exciting. I'm basically willing to dismiss green almost right away, just because nothing there pulls me in that direction. There's nothing really profoundly powerful. So Tormod's Script is probably not going to be played. Chronometon will probably get in the deck no matter what. Out of these, we have the green ring, we have, what is this, the red ring? That one I actually think is pretty good. We got 2 Clock of Omens, don't think I'll be playing that, even though it cutely combos, I guess, with Chronometon. But don't think that'll happen. Phyrexian Hulk can get in there if it has to, but I'm not looking forward to playing that relatively inefficient, colorless creature. So now let's turn to red. We've got a Volk Geyser, which is important. Any spell like this can be a finisher. It can be a removal spell. It's got a lot of versatility. Remember, Sealed is a little bit slower than Draft. We've got this guy who I always want to play, but I'm not sure he's all that great. Especially because he costs 5. I actually like Chandra's Fury. I like running it in the main, but it's a good sideboard card too. Again, Firewing Phoenix is a good flyer. Craterize isn't that relevant. Wall of Fire would be good in the control deck, I guess, though it's not my favorite defensive card, certainly. Rummaging Goblin is good. 3 Reckless Brutes is actually, that would be great in some sort of aggressive deck. But whatever deck I'm thinking about building that's red and black probably wouldn't work very well, depending on what's in the rest of my black, because the black looks like it has a strong control element to it here. Oh, there's some good burn, though, in red. That's for sure. And the 3 Reckless Brutes would be great. Arms Dealer is a good removal spell, especially if you have more goblins, which we have at least one of here. Probably only one. So red is questionable right now. I think it's probably good. So in the black, we've got some high-end creatures that are playable, though not exciting. Rise from the Grave, I think it's a pretty good card, especially in a removal-heavy deck where you can take one of your opponent's creatures. It's good as a drop right after Mutilate. Liliana Shade is, I think, one of the more interesting good late-game cards in the set. Bat is fine. Blood Reckoning is an interesting option, though it probably wouldn't start in the main. Servant is good. Mind Rot is probably pretty good and sealed, especially if you're on, I don't know, I imagine, maybe if you're on the draw and sealed, it depends. depends on how fast their deck is. Giant Scorpions are great defensive creatures. I think this basically sets us up to playing some sort of control deck based on black, though I could be wrong about that. Let's check the blue out. Kraken Hatchling, pretty good as a defensive creature. Essence Scatter is a good card in this set. 2 Divinations, Scroll Thief is an excellent card in this set, I think. Water Courser is fine, though. Unexciting, Tricks of the Trade, I don't know if there's anything I really want to put that on. I guess it goes well on a lot of things, but the blue's just not very deep. That's the problem I have with this, though the black is pretty deep, so I could foresee actually playing heavy black and then fitting some blue in there. Cards like Kraken Hatchling would be all-stars in a deck that wants to survive long enough to force your opponent to play a bunch of dudes and then mutilate them away. That being said, I'm not sure you want 0/4s for 1 in your splash color, though it certainly could be done. Let's look at white. We've got this Sarah Avatar that we probably wouldn't be playing. Good old Ox. This thing is unusually annoying for a card in Sealed. I think it's better in Sealed than in Draft, just because if you have a curve in Draft, like oftentimes this won't be all that exciting after it comes down. You only gain a couple life with it before they finish it. Here's a removal spell. This Fog spell is not so bad. Tended Knight is good. There's that double Glorious Charge, double Silvercoat Lion. Haven Squire I like. This irrelevant 1-drop. War Falcon I don't foresee being all that great. So what I'm going to look into doing is building a black-red base and then a black-white and seeing what I can do. The Ring could get in there in theory, but I doubt it, just given the number of red creatures. So, I mean, that could get in. Let's just dump all the playable red cards in there. I actually don't think Wall of Fire would be good in this deck because I don't want to play a card I want to bring down early game that costs red. So I'm going to drop, well, if I can, using this recording software on my older computer. I haven't quite set up the recording software on my newer computer yet. Somewhat difficult. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that my computer's running slowly right now and there's a lot of lag. So if I brought the red in, I would probably cut this buddy, probably cut the Mindclaw Shaman, maybe bring it in from the board. The Reckless Brutes are awkward, I'll have to look at that in a second. Duress is, I don't know, Duress could be fine main, I don't know yet. And all these, Blood Reckoning doesn't go in, at least not in the main. Zombie Goliath probably doesn't. Veilborn Ghoul, even if this is a defensive deck largely, it survives Mutilate, which is kind of interesting. Disentomb is good actually with Mutilate too. So let's bring all these in. It's going to be more than enough cards. Scoot this up a little bit, organize them by cost, and see what we would cut. We're down to about half the amount of time. But we've distilled at least one of the colors we're playing, because I'm pretty sure we're going to be playing black. I think that the power of Mutilate is sufficient to warrant playing black in Draft. Just gives you so many different control options. You can play your early game in a very particular way if you want. The problem, though, is that the red is like a lot of burn and then aggressive creatures that I just don't think suit the strategy very well. So I'm going to separate creatures, non-creatures here. Like, it's a weird deck when you're playing Reckless Brutes and Giant Scorpions. I guess they force your opponent to deal with them, but I don't know. It doesn't seem all that exciting. Kindled Fury is the same way. So, like, already I can say what I would cut is probably the Mog Flunkies, probably the Kindled Fury, then the Reckless Brutes. I tried to cut all 3 there, but no dice. This Rummaging Goblin would stay, almost assuredly. These Blood Thrones, okay, so first of all, the Mog Flunkies might actually be a good creature on the D. Not entirely sure about that, though. These are virtually creatures. The Rise from the Graves, even though they're expensive. I would definitely cut the Fire Elemental, I think, just because of the expense of the Rise from the Graves. Question is, does that leave me enough late-game win cons? I think so, because Xanthrid Gorgon is one of those. This leaves me with 23 cards right here. Is this playable? Disentomb actually seems fine in this deck, especially when it returns an Arms Dealer or a Giant Scorpion. Like, this is actually, I think, pretty good looking as far as the deck goes. Phyrexian Hulk, would it want to come in as like just another beater, maybe instead of a Rise from the Grave? Not sure about that. I actually don't think so, just because the high removal count of this. I'd rather not play something that costs 6, even if it is consistently a 5/4. The Chandra's Fury is, I think, questionable here. Burn isn't especially good in this deck, but eliminating guys with 1 toughness on your opponent's side of the board is a lot of the time. Walking Corpse is unexciting, but I think something to at least hold down the ground early. Like, the problem with this deck is that a lot of the guys are wimpy until late game, but that's okay, we gotta Mutilate, right? Can't depend on drawing it every game, but I don't know, you know that you got it in your deck when you do. So I think actually out of these, I think the Chandra's Fury is one of the weaker cards. I would consider bringing in actually the Mog Funkies instead. That might seem strange, but Mog Funkies can block with another guy and he's hard to deal with. Plus it has some kind of synergy with Arms Dealer. Even though it's not a super aggressive deck, at least, maybe that's silly. Maybe I wouldn't want to bring that in. Another good thing about this is that we could play the Dragon Skull Summit. The ring is terrible in this deck, I think, because there's so few red guys to take advantage of its ability. You can also play like a combat trick, like Kindled Fury. That's good with these giant scorpions, which I have 2 of. So maybe that's worth actually considering. Like First Strike isn't something to tip your nose to, in a snooty sort of way. More creatures than you think because of the Rise from the Grave. So even though it's only a 13 count, we actually can rise twice. And Disentomb, I think, is better in Sealed than it is in Draft. Especially when we have like a semi-bomb creature. We have several ways to bring this back, which is good. Yeah, I see this as being a plausible configuration of the deck. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. This is going to be called, apparently this is going to be in my, let's put it on the desktop. So this is going to be Red, Black, Sealed. If you're going to save that, we can load it up in a minute. Yep, it's not a standard deck, don't worry. So now let's cut the red cards. You'll notice that I'm not considering like a red-white aggressive deck, even with the 3 Reckless Brutes. The reason is that for Sealed, it makes me a little bit nervous to attempt something like that. I'd rather have options and take advantage of Mutilate's power, and the fact that I can not outplay opponents, but sort of play around knowing that I have a Mutilate in my deck. And here, in the white, we've got these lions, which I could bring in foreseeably. I'm looking for the knight, the Attendant Knight. There it is. So, like, I could definitely see bringing in a Safe Passage for the main. Probably wouldn't bring in a Glorious Charge. Divine Verdict would totally go in. Griffin Protector would almost certainly go in. Just as a 2/3 flyer, if anything else. And then the Ox and the Healer would probably at least sit there for a little bit. So what this does, it gives me less efficient removal, but creatures that can hold the ground a little bit better. So if I were to imagine putting the cards in that way, that's how the deck would look. I might cut the Ox or the Healer, one of the two. I think the Healer's benefit is probably better, even though it can die to a Searing Spear, while the Ox can't. Could be wrong. Ox can hold its ground against cards that are getting pumped with Servant a little bit better. So like maybe this is the better deck, because like Attended Knight and Aven Squire are just good cards. They increase the quality of your other creatures. With that said, I kind of like just having better removal. And also, late game, we have a bunch of options with the Phoenix, Rummaging Goblin and the Arms Dealer. Kindle Fury isn't anything to write home about, but then we also can end the game with a Volcanic Geyser. I think the power level of the red-black build is just higher. What I can do, actually, is save this as like a loose white-black build to bring in during sideboarding. That'll decrease the amount of time it takes to sideboard. So let's load then the red-black build. Yeah, I just saved it a minute ago. Unless it didn't save. No, it did. So let's load this up. Okay, I think this is a sort of deck that we want to play an Evolving Wilds in. Decreases the swamp count, potentially, that we have in the deck, but that's okay. Finds a Swamp Ore. or Mountain. Because we have the Volcanic Geyser at red, I think it's fair to play this. Mainly, though, it's probably just to assure that we don't get screwed out of black, honestly. Dragon Skull Summit would certainly go in. I think it's going to replace a Mountain in the deck in the end, just to make sure that we can hit all the things like Sign and Blood. So out of this, we've got 15. Let's sort by color. Obviously, this is a heavy favoring in the black direction, but it's important to note we could bring in Chandra's Fury after the board. I mean, maybe it would be good to put this in the main. We'll have to think about that after I put the land in and secure the fact that our clock's almost out. Okay, so I'm thinking, let's see, we've got 15 to go. I'm thinking we could go 8-7, that's way too much in favor of red, actually. Oh, it's not in favor of red, but that would be way too much red. Go 9-6, and that's 15. That gives us, I think 9 and 6 is right. I have to think about that for a second. Let's see what Wizards has to say. It says 11 and 4. Well, we won't be doing that. 9-6 gives us 7 red. This means we're probably going to Evolving Wilds for Swamp, actually, because of the Dragon Skull Summit. But I like this better. This gives us enough opportunity to use the Firewing Phoenix's second ability and make sure that we can cast Volcanic Geyser. It also gives us enough swamps that we can use Veilborn Ghoul. So, there are things about this that make me uncomfortable, this deck. We have to survive to the late game. Oops, I keep saying suggest instead of putting in done. There's also the question of splashing something else. I didn't see anything in here I needed to splash. We could splash for removal or something, or, like, I don't know. Nothing seemed very exciting. Again, the weakness that this deck's going to have are these lower drops. Bloodthrone Vampire is not excessively interesting in our deck. I suppose it has some sort of mild synergy with Veilborn Ghoul. It allows us to do something with pacifism creatures, for instance. And I guess it has some mild synergy with Firewing Phoenix. In the end, it's not that good. It might get us out of, like, a situation in the late game. I could see cutting it in the sideboard depending on what we're playing against. If they're playing against a lot of X1s, like creatures that have, I mean, maybe we should just board it out right away. Just cut it for Phyrexian Hulk right now. Raises our curve so much, but Bloodthrone Vampire doesn't tangle very well with smaller guys anyway. I suppose it can survive a Mutilate right before you cast it. Just something. Let's go ahead and keep it in. Mind Rot's another card that's questionable. I can board it out, but I think a lot of the times when you're playing Mind Rot, you can eliminate their threats before they hit the table, which is really effective. So, let's go ahead and go with this. Not entirely secure in it. Questionable cards include Bloodthrone Vampire, Sign and Blood. The Walking Corpse, I think, needs to be in here for this deck to be viable. Cards like Disentomb aren't good until late game, unfortunately, and Kindled Fury's not always the best either. So, not satisfied, but willing to try it. I'm going to go ahead and submit, and I'll see you in round 1.